Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to Unexplored Skyrim. Now, in my previous video I mentioned I'm going to start a new save to kind of explore Skyrim more and visit other locations, while also using my more experienced account. So, for this video I decided we would go ahead and do Helgen. Now, Helgen is the starting city that you have to go to. I was going to see if there's anything interesting when exploring or during the Alduin attack. However, I couldn't find anything, and I can't really add much to the beginning of this game. It's been done hundreds of thousands of times at this point, so I'm just not going to really go so much into it. But I decided to go ahead and talk about my character for this unexplored playthrough. Now, I chose to play as a Khajiit because mainly I've never actually played as a Khajiit, and also they kind of resemble an otter. Obviously, they're more of a cat, but otters and cats have a lot of similarities, so I decided to go with this, and his name is John H. Otter, which is the name I use in many role-playing games. But after that, we can just kind of continue through the main quest. Now, I did try to explore and try to find unique things during the opening sequence of Skyrim. However, I was unable to find anything really significant or anything of note that hasn't been covered thousands of times before. During the opening sequence, it is nearly damn impossible to actually die from Alduin, even though he's like the World Eater, and you just kind of just go through the tutorial like you always would. Now, I kind of try to roleplay my actual role as a Khajiit, so I initially have decided to go with the Stormcloaks. However, I'll probably end up siding with the Imperials for many reasons, but anyways, we won't get into that now, but we'll go ahead and fast forward through this, and we will return to Helgen to see what awaits us. Now, for this video, I wanted to compare Helgen right after the dragon attack, and then look at it at a significant period of time after the dragon attack. So if you return to Helgen right after the dragon attack, you're going to find a lot of fires still going, along with some charred bodies that are laying around. So that's a pretty cool effect, that the fire is still going, there's still a lot of destruction. The game just doesn't have a default setting once you finish like the tutorial area. And you can kind of navigate your way through the town. However, there's nothing of notable loot at this point in the game. But some things to note for now: this gate is not locked, it's just a normal gate. And as we make our way through the town, we can just find a lot of fires that are burning, along with some barrels. Now, inside of the inn, this is where things will mostly change when we visit later. Right now, there's really no notable loot. There's some barrels and stuff laying around with like food. And there's also a bed. However, we cannot sleep in the bed because it is considered owned for whatever reason. Then outside, we can see the execution area and the tower where Alduin attacks. Now, moving over to my account, that is a higher level. When we approach Helgen this time, the gate is locked, an apprentice level lock, and upon opening the gate, we're going to find a couple of bandits that will happily greet us. So we can see that Helgen has not been restored by the Empire or by the Stormcloaks, and I kicked that guy through the frickin' planet. That's pretty frickin' sweet. But like I was saying, Helgen has obviously not been rebuilt by anyone, and now it's just occupied by some bandits. And you can kind of go through the ruins, and most notable is some of the charred bodies are missing, and a lot of the fires have been, put out, which obviously makes sense because it's been a long time on this playthrough since I've been to Helgen. So some really cool environmental changes happening here in Helgen, and just the fact that the town has now been taken over by bandits is pretty cool. And as we make our way over towards the inn inside of Helgen, we can find a lot more loot than we could before. As you can just see on that one table, there was a coin purse and some potions. Also, the bed is no longer owned for whatever reason. So I found that to be a little bit interesting. So for whatever reason, that bed went from owned to unowned. And at the top of the tower, which is now accessible, we can find a bandit along with a chest next to him. And opening the chest, we can find some random loot. I just found some gold and a circlet. So not a whole lot of amazing loot, but I just thought it was pretty cool. Now, the loot that is the most notable is if we go to the second floor of the inn, we can find mead with juniper berries. This is a reference to the beginning of the game. As you enter Helgen, Roloff mentions that he used to have a crush on a girl that made mead mixed with juniper berries, and now we can see the maid is still here.
This is Helgen. I used to be sweet on a girl from here. Wonder if Velod is still making that mead with juniper berries mixed in.
So a pretty cool little reference, but besides that, not much has changed. Now from here I decided to go south and explore 2 locations, using my new account, kind of just showcasing where I go at the beginning of the game. I thought it would be pretty cool to use Unexplored Skyrim to kind of document my journey across Skyrim. So the next location is Fort Neugrad, and as you saw on the minimap earlier, this is a location to the southeast of Helgen. Now, when you first come here, there's going to be a lot of bandits here, as you can see me having to fight them off, but not actually that difficult even for a newer character, and just taking their loot for good measure. Now, I cleared out the outside of the fort, and this is a pretty typical Skyrim fort. However, something to note is that later in the game, the fort can either be occupied by the Legion or the Stormcloaks, and the blacksmith area will be cleaned up. Obviously, depending on the course of the Civil War, you will either have rescue from Fort Neugrad, where you have to free Stormcloak prisoners, or the battle for Fort Neugrad, where the Dragonborn must aid the Legion in reclaiming the fort. And right now, as you can see, we're in the prisoner part of the fort, and as we make our way down, we can just find some pretty minor loot. However, as we get to the very bottom of this section, there is a small cave with a lake, and there is something of interest in the small, I guess not lake, but a small pond. And if we go down to the left, as you can see here, we can find a treasure chest that is an adept lock, and by picking the lock, we can find some random loot. And from here, we can simply just swim out of the cave through a small entrance, and this takes us outside of the fort. Obviously, this is supposed to be used during one of the quests, probably rescuing Stormcloak soldiers, as an alternate entrance to make the quest a little bit easier and a little bit more engaging. Pretty cool that they have a secret underwater entrance to the fort. And this small lake sits just below the fortress itself, and it is a very beautiful and peaceful scene. We also have this small dock and a rowboat that is tied to the dock. So pretty cool area, really nice environment, and just very beautiful. Now, going to the main part of the fort, we can actually find a lot of things of interest. So obviously, as we enter the fort, we're going to encounter several bandits in this kind of like lunch hall or mess hall area that would typically be used by troops, but we can see these bandits are enjoying the meal that was left behind, or something maybe they cooked. As we make our way through the fort, a lot of interesting stuff is on the second floor. As you can see, I just entered the second floor here. On my right, we can find like the barracks with several beds and a sleeping bandit that we kill. Inside of this room, there is a chest that we can loot, which contains random loot. But besides that, not a whole lot inside of the barracks, but definitely worth a look. However, in the next room, as you can see this wooden door, we can find a ladder. And you definitely want to climb up this ladder because on the top, we can find a chest. And by opening the chest, we can find a treasure map for a treasure that is located nearby. And there you can see the Fort Neugrad treasure map. And this treasure is located just on the northern side of the small lake. It's actually really easy to find if you use the map like you can see here. Back inside the fort and continuing along the second floor, we can find the bandit chief, who is a bit of a hard fight inside of this room. So definitely take him out, you kind of just back off like I do, and he's actually not too difficult, just don't want him to get a hit in on our character, and it's actually pretty easy. Now on the chief, there will be a key to the library, which you'll want to pick up. However, the library can be unlocked without the key, so it's not necessary to continue on. Now on the bandit chief, we can find his journal, and the journal is a bit interesting for us because he talks about the dragon attack at Helgen allowed the bandits to take control of the fort. Of course, for my character, the dragon attack on Helgen literally just happened. We walked straight to this fort from Helgen, so it doesn't really make sense time-wise Obviously, just the way the game was set up, the developers did not expect players to go straight to Fort Neugrad from Helgen, but I just thought it was a bit funny. And inside of this room, we can find a chest with a scroll of Blizzard that is worth a lot of caps, along with a necklace. And besides that, though, in this room, there is not a whole lot, so we can keep on going. Also, there's a library key on the dresser. Heading back downstairs, we can go to the mess hall, and we can find the door to the library. Inside, we're going to find Brandish, who is a mage that is pretty high level, but we're able to kill him quite brutally. And by looting him, we can find some pretty minor loot, just some gold and potions. Now, inside of this room, there is a lot of interest, mainly two things. One is an expert locked chest that took me way too long than I care to admit to open. So, you know, if you have low lockpick like I do, be patient, and eventually it will pop open. And then you can take all of the goodies that it contains, which for me was a couple of amulets, potions, and a stone. Then over on this table, we can also find a book that will increase our light armor. So pretty good find for a low level such as myself. And then going to go look for the treasure, we head to the eastern part of the lake. Earlier I said north, that is incorrect. Eastern part of the lake. And we just go up this little hill and we can find the treasure chest behind these rocks, which will contain some random loot that is, at least for me as a new character, pretty darn good. Now, before ending the video, I decided to continue even further south because I didn't really know where this path led. So I wanted to see where it went all the way. And eventually I found a random NPC, Mike the Liar, who is a recurring source of misinformation within the Elder Scrolls series. He has been featured in Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Elder Scrolls Online. It is a bit of an Easter egg to provide different commentaries about the Elder Scrolls series. So I was very happy to find him along my journey and to feature him in Unexplored Skyrim. I then continued my way further south where I finally encountered a fortress called Bloodlet Throne. Didn't really know what to expect upon entering the fort. However, I thought it might be vampires, and it was vampires. Now, as I came into this main room, I was very surprised by this gargoyle. Now, this gargoyle fight proved to be very difficult because I was a very low level at this point in the game. As you can see, I'm just in level 1, actually, which is pretty wild. I almost died, but I used some potions, and I was able to finally to defeat the gargoyle. Little bit of a stressful and difficult fight, but I had a lot of fun fighting this gargoyle nonetheless. And this did not deter me from continuing my adventure into this fortress. I was actually more intrigued than anything else, and the gargoyle had some pretty decent loot on him. Now, in the main area, this wooden door was blocked, so we can't enter it at this time, and I continued further into the fort where I found more vampires. Now, eventually, the actual fortress ends, and it goes into this icy cavern, and inside of the icy cave, we can find a very large central structure. Also, interestingly, is a lot of the loot in here is considered stealing for whatever reason, even though they're vampires. I guess perhaps it belonged to the old inhabitants of the fortress. But like I was saying, there's this large central area inside of the cave, and there's going to be some vampires in here that we have to kill. And when I say we have to kill, we have to massacre them, because they were really easy to kill. And up on this central platform, we can find a locked cage. And inside the cage, we can find a dead Khajiit, which is very sad indeed. We have to obviously avenge our Khajiit brethren. And then there was another frickin' gargoyle, and after a very similar situation, using a lot of potions, I was finally able to kill the gargoyle, just in time as some vampires came up behind me, trying to kill me. But thankfully the vampires inside of this cave were pretty easy to kill. Then we have an alchemy table inside of this room, along with a lot of prison cells, so we want to kill these vampires. Look around, not much as far as loot. There was a wolf inside of a cage, so I killed him, and there's also dead people on the bed. We can assume they were killed by the vampires. And then inside of this locked cell, we have a lot of things of interest. Inside of this chest, we have some pretty decent loot, including some armor and gold. And then over here, we have a skill book, which will increase our illusion by 1. Really good. Coin purse, and then a scroll of blizzard, which you can obviously use, or you can sell it for a lot of money. And there's 2 ways into this cage, but it doesn't matter which way because they both come from the same place. Continuing even further into the cave, we can kind of find a battle arena. We can find the vampire master, and he will release some death hounds into the arena to kill you. But if you're quick, you can just pull the chain and jump up here and begin fighting the vampire master or master vampire early. Now, he has a lot of HP, and he can drain your health pretty quickly, but using the rest of my potions, I was able to kill him along with his minion. Now, the death hounds themselves are also a pretty difficult fight, and I used up almost all of my potions in order to kill off everyone inside of this room. So we're kind of back at square one, but at least we have a lot of experience and a lot of loot we can sell further down the line. But after killing the death hounds, there really isn't a whole lot left to do in this room, so we can just leave. Now we can go loot those bandits that are dead on the main area, but they don't really have anything, and as we exit we can find a chest that'll have some okay loot inside of it, and then we can find the barricaded door from earlier in the playthrough. And with that, we completed Bloodlet Throne. Obviously, the throne was held by the Master Vampire. As I look to go south, we can see that this is the limit of the southern part of this path as it ends on this wall. Alright guys, I had a lot of fun making this video, kind of comparing a location from early game to later game and seeing some of the differences in the area. Also, exploring the surrounding area was a lot of fun, and we found some pretty interesting locations and a lot of loot that is very helpful to a new player, such as myself. And for the remainder of this series, I will try to primarily use my new account. However, if you guys give me recommendations, I obviously want to go to those locations right away, so I'll probably use my account that is obviously a higher level. Alright guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. If you have recommendations for a future video of Unexplored Skyrim, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time.